I've just forgotten how to talk. Hi, thank you very much for that, Sharon. I am happy to be here, but I'm in WA, so I'm currently cursing everyone in the eastern states for forgetting that we can do things in the afternoon that are in the afternoon here in WA as well. It's too early in the morning for me. I know how to do words. I do. So when Melanie asked me to do this, I actually initially said to her, I don't really want to do public speaking about disability anymore. That's not really my thing. And she said, oh, well, I thought you could talk about your dancing. And because Melanie knows me very well, she knew I'd say, oh, all right then. Because at this point in my life, I feel like there are many people who have much better things to say about disability. I've said all I wanted to say about disability, I thought. And then I was thinking and I realized, actually, no, there's a couple of last things I'd like to say before I stop doing this sort of thing, which I'm going to talk about today. And firstly, I have to start with the fact that for my fellow activists, particularly in my generation, some of whom I'm looking at across the top of this laptop, who are some of my dearest friends, that we have to stop at some point. We're always going to be having to advocate for ourselves as disabled people, particularly as people with physical disabilities, and those of us who are very visible ones. We're always, our entire life is advocacy and activism, even if we're not working in this space. But at some point we have to stop because the official stuff and take a break, because it's really easy to burn out. And I think and I'm seeing none of this is actually going to make any linear sense, but that's what you sorry, I'm not fully awake yet, but I hope I make some sense. For the last 20 years that I've been in the disability space and working in this area, so many of us have done such great work, and I'm so proud to be a part of a community that has done so much great work. But over the years, I've noticed in myself and other people, this work takes a toll. And sometimes our lives just feel like advocacy and activism. It just feels like we're fighting all the time, and that is so exhausting. And I've seen people, and I include myself in this, get really damaged and then turn around and damage other people because we're so burnt out. And what are we doing this for if not to actually have a good life or enjoy some part of our lives? Because otherwise it's just pain and distress and trauma over and over again. And the outside world is always going to cause that. The able-bodied world is always going to be hard to negotiate. It's getting easier than it was, but it's always going to take so much out of us. We have to have spaces in our lives that are just fun and joy and resting, where we're not fighting. Because I've seen in the last few years, some of my dearest, closest friends who are family have gotten really sick. And it's not necessarily caused by, overwork, but it means that their lives will be shortened and they won't have all the time they should have to enjoy life and relax and be happy. So many of us have so much trauma, and I'm definitely one of those people. I was not lucky enough to grow up in a family that was supportive. I grew up in a very abusive and neglectful environment. So I think a lot of people watching have also experienced this, and I'm always so happy when people like Elise talk about, say that they had supportive families who fought with them and for them. And I want all of us to have that, but we don't. And so we've got an extra level of fighting that we've got to do. And it takes everything out of you. So we have to, at some point, we've got to get some enjoyment out of life. So several years ago, I stopped working in advocacy and activism because I developed kidney stones, and that's a 5-hour talk. I know far more about kidney stones than I knew in 2018. And I've been very unwell for the last few years. And so this is the first time I've done any public speaking around disabilities in 2018. But one of the things I started doing when I stopped working in advocacy and activism was I started dancing. And I've always danced. I have cerebral palsy, and I started using a wheelchair about a decade ago, and I used a mobility scooter since I was 19. But I've always loved dancing, and if there's a disco, I'm the first one up on the floor. And I'm the last one off the floor, and it doesn't matter. Usually I can't move the next day, but damn it, it's worth it. So in 2019, I started doing ballroom dancing. It was ballroom. It was dance lessons supposedly specifically for people with disabilities, but it was run by non-disabled people. So that lasted 2 years, and I had to leave. But I loved it so much. And, I use an electric wheelchair, and the way they're designed these days, you can absolutely ballroom dance in an electric wheelchair, and it is the joy of my life. And I had people saying to me they'd never seen me look like as happy as I do when I'm dancing. And I spent most of my childhood severely depressed. And I think in that 2-year span, there now exist more photos of me smiling than have ever existed in the previous 40 odd years. And just recently I started, and what I really, really want to talk to you today is about what the younger generation of disabled people are doing, and how it's so different from what my generation are doing. They're finding new ways to do things. They have better boundaries. They say no more than any of us ever did. And that's, I'm pretty much, that's my job these days, is just to egg them on, because they are doing amazing work. And I've started, I'm now dancing in a show that's developed by young trans and non-binary people, and young people who are young disabled people who are from non-English backgrounds, because also the disability space is too white. There's too many, there's not enough people from different cultural backgrounds in the disability space. And I love that I'm seeing more younger people from different backgrounds in our community speaking out and speaking up and having great boundaries and saying, no, actually, I'm not going to push myself till I drop, because none of us should be doing that. It's not a sustainable way of doing things. And, life doesn't care if you've worked hard. You're not, the only joy we're going to get is joy we develop ourselves. And we have to rest. We all have to rest much more than we're doing. Because it's a hard fight, and we're always going to have to fight. And I think, as Elise said, it's only a fight that we can do as a group. And I think of when I started getting involved in disability stuff, I didn't have any disabled friends growing up. I was mainstreamed in a rural area, and there were other disabled people, but the stigma was so great about having a disability that, you know, we didn't congregate because we wanted to appear normal. And now I'm 51, and most of my friends are disabled, and quite a lot of the friends that are able-bodied are also developing disabilities. But the greatest strength I've found in my life is having a community of disabled friends. And honestly, that's the only reason I'm still sane at this point. Well, sort of sane. And everyone that's in the room with me right now can stop smirking and laughing. That would be really good. I know where you all live.
We love you, Rayna.
But yeah, look, seeing as I got asked to do this, and it's too early for me and it's Sunday, please, that's the only thing I want to say to any younger disabled people out there. Yes, there's work to do. Yes, we need you to do it, but please don't burn yourself out doing it, because there's no point doing that. Otherwise, why? We have to have something, whatever your joy is, even if it's the littlest thing, even if it's just, you know, your garden or someone else's garden, or looking at the sky and figuring out what the clouds look like. Whatever it is, you've got to do that thing. And
what a good reminder.
Yeah,
we need to be doing, Rayna. I love
because it's so easy to burn out, and I've seen so many of us do it. And I've been really happy over the last year to have conversations with friends I've worked with for years, and they've said I'm retiring, and then I spend 20 minutes doing, you know, bog laps of joy in my wheelchair. So I go, yes. And they're usually the people I know that they're at every committee, they're doing all the work. Don't, you know, stop before your body makes you stop, because it will.